In the midst of a crisis of isolation, where loneliness leads to deaths of despair, being truly connected isn't a luxury. It's a lifesaver. Casper ter Kuile, The Power of Ritual. Bending Not Breaking, the Dragon Prince Edition. Reflections. The Queen's Soul. Welcome back to another episode of Bending Not Breaking. This is Ben Pruitt, your host, and I'm thrilled to invite you all into this next mini episode on the Queen's Soul. That's right. Today we're talking about the next reflection, and Devon and Kris are, of course, back with us today, and I am thrilled. And so I'm really excited to talk about the Queen's Soul. So I'm gonna be like I kind of picked a theme for this one, and I don't know that this is the best theme, but I'm curious what if it isn't, what do you think the theme is? The theme that I kind of picked up for this reflection, this fanfic, this ficlet, is ritual, and it seems ritual is really important in this as a thematic piece, and I'm curious. Can you just tell us about the concept? Who came up with the concept of this? Like, how did this come about?
Well, this one is one that is definitely something that you will see come again in season 4. It came from wanting to tell a story that connects again to something that you will see in the season upcoming. That's really all I could say about it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. That's awesome. So tell me about what ritual is for you all. And I'm like, what is it? What is it? How does it serve us? And because it's pretty clear that there are some benefits from this short story, but I'm curious about what that looks like for you all.
I'll go first just because this one I'll be the slightly vulnerable one here. I have OCD, which means that ritual is really important to me because I have a brain that really wants to control every sort of like instance and variable in my life to a sort of alarming degree, and I've gotten a lot better with it over the years. But ritual to me is a source of comfort, of safety, of control, and right down to very little things like the way that all my books are stacked, for example, and all my notes are sort of like organized on my desk. It's all a very silly thing, but knowing that these things are in place that I can perform and come out the other side of like knowing that I have done so brings me a great deal of ongoing comfort and safety and ability to function. So
wow,
little much, but
yeah, no worries. Thanks, Devon. So I'm going to move over to Kris. Kris, do you have any, what are your thoughts on ritual?
Oh gosh, I always tend to fall in two very different directions when I think about this. And I thought about this when I was writing this. For me personally, I love patterns a little too much. I see them. I think I mostly see them when they're actually there, and I try not to take it too seriously when I do see things. I'm like, that connects, but I don't need to engage with that, you know. So I try and keep myself a little unattached from that sort of thing if I can, but I like to see them anyway. It makes me feel smart and in control when I can connect things. Kind of like what Devon said. There is a feeling of I understand my environment and I have power within it that I think is a very human thing, no matter whether it's today or, tens of thousands of years ago, which is the other direction that I tend to go, where you've got ancient cultures who lived in a world with megafauna and no technology, no advanced technology, and they needed patterns that they had proven could keep them alive and safe. And then also benefit them. And those were the things that were okay to do because they wouldn't get you killed. They wouldn't endanger the tribe. They wouldn't endanger their food sources. They wouldn't get anybody hurt or delay anything that needed to be done in a timely manner. migration, planting, stuff like that. Ritual and tradition come from necessity if you look back far enough. If you go
Wow.
way, 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 way back, everything that we do comes from somebody found that this worked, and it probably worked better than anything else that they had. So that's why they kept doing it. In a way, it's sort of a social evolution, in a way. But there's also the community side of it where you
Yeah.
connect to the people that you do it with. Is it really a tradition if you're the only one doing it?
Yeah.
I mean, it can be, but I feel that it means a lot more for the reason that that the siblings in the story are feel the way that they feel when they do it is because they're both doing it together. There's
Yeah.
a reason that Kareem waited for Janai to show up.
Yeah.
He was like, where is she? We're doing this together. This is what we do. I feel better when you're here with me. This is important to me, not to do it by myself, but to do it with you. We are both Kessa siblings. And so
I love what you're pointing to. It's just incredible. And the idea that the rituals that we take part in that are even if we aren't consciously aware, but there's just this ancestral wisdom that is building and broadening as we continue to evolve as a species, that where we are leaning into these things because in a way it's attached to survival, it's attached to our connectedness, our community, and all of these things that you're pointing to are really beautiful in terms of how this ritual came about. Sorry, I think I cut you off at the very end. I don't know if
no, I'm just rambling. Seriously, I
yeah.
do. You just get me going. It's world building is what I'm talking about here. It always
Yeah.
comes back to what is humanity and what part of humanity can I, eyedropper and then put over here.
Yeah, no, it's just really beautiful. So this tradition in this short story is in Luxoria, for loved ones who die, one lights a candle, and I don't know there. I hesitated to pick what details to pull out because it was a golden candle, but it smelled of this. It smelled of yellow plumeria, which is Kessa's favorite. I assume is a flower. And there's all of these little details, like, does it have to be a golden candle, or is that just because there was a lot of little details in there that were really beautiful to capture. But the essence of it is lighting a candle for one who has died so that it might guide the soul of the dead back to the sun. And that is the Sunfire Elves tradition. That's their ritual. And I'm curious, where did this concept come from somewhere? Or I'm curious about that. How did this evolve?
I think we made it up as this sort of reflection of the idea that when anything, this is going to get into some specific canon, I suppose, but the idea that anything that is born connected to a primal source, when they die, that piece of the magic primal source that is it within them returns to that, the place it came, in this case, the sun. And so I think there's some element of okay, so how would that be represented within the culture of the Sunfire Elves? And we came up with this idea that, okay, so death is a darkness and they are a culture of light and fire. And so how do they make sure that in the darkness of death, they guide this person back to the sun, the primal source that is the source of them as sort of beings. And so we came with this idea that it's this very slow burning spiral candle that sort of points skyward and it burns up. And so, you watch this candle, you stay up all night, you make sure it doesn't go out, and you perform, things about the person. And Kris and I had this really neat little headcanon along the way about when a Sunfire Elf saying something along the lines of when you die, make sure there are, things that people remember about you so that they can perform your soul candle ritual. And it's sort of encouraging people to form meaningful connections to each other because Kareem and Janai, they do dances, they talk about things that Kessa liked. Yeah. The candle itself is a smell that she was fond of. It really is something like all things about it are for the person who is departed.
It's an individual candle. It's specifically for Kessa because of all these details, and the ritual that goes around it is specifically for Kessa because they
have this sad idea of well, what if a Sunfire Elf died and nobody really knew them well? What would they perform, and that
We're
there's sort of like
terrible.
a small tragedy about that. No, I really do think that that's an interesting angle to it. Like they're encouraged to form connections with people because these things are important beyond their mortal existence.
Wow.
And so I think that you sort of came up with that angle, Kris. So I'm like,
I did.
I'm celebrating it just
I was
because I
like,
think it's
let's
a
make it
really
worse.
good,
Let's make it sad.
well,
What
really, that's my
if?
job. But but yes, I think that there's something really cultural about like beyond just the night that you perform this ritual, like how in your life are you preparing for this ritual to be something that is inevitable for you as part of this
Mm.
culture. Um,
It's just a
anyway,
beautiful, it's so beautiful because what this does is it facilitates grief, right? And that is something that's notoriously difficult, and we suck at it in American culture and, you know, the Western culture in general, right? Like it is like grieving is something that's really difficult and it's often not socially acceptable. And what we're doing is you have given this culture a pathway to grief, right? And you've given the living a pathway to cultivate connection so that when that happens, you're giving the people who are left behind something too. Like this, there's a lot of
It's so good. It's got
yeah,
both sides.
it's
It's
so
got the
good.
happiness, it's got the light, and then it's got the darkness and what to do about that
Yeah.
darkness. There's a lot in here, and it was really fun to sit
Ugh,
with this story and write it.
yeah. Okay, I have a question now that I'm really curious about. If you were to have a candle for you, what would your candle smell like?
Yellow plumeria is my favorite flower. That's how it got in there.
Ah, okay.
I
Sneak
was
peek.
like, Devon.
I mean, like I always encourage you to put indulgent personal things into all things.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was like, "Can it smell like this?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Um, my candle, I can't decide. A really like awful answer is maybe a wine, but uh, sticky toffee pudding,
I
which
love
is
it.
a British dessert that I only discovered because I married a Scottish man, and when I visited his family, it's a very common just like
Yeah.
dessert made of dates and molasses, and it's all very indulgent, and it smells like spices and sweets. And I normally don't like sweet things, but there's something about this that is just like so wonderful. And every time I smell it, I get really excited. So that would be maybe part of my candle, even though it's a late addition to my likes in life.
Ah,
And people would have to bring a lot of dogs to my ritual, and so the dogs could hang out all night too. And that's it. That's all I got.
wow. Yeah, I actually, that's a really personal question. Like, what's your favorite? Like, and it's not necessarily your favorite smell, but like it's almost like this. What is a smell that like people think of you when they smell this almost, right? Yeah, I guess I wonder if people would like associate like freshly baking something for me, like a baked good. I wonder if that's what would come up. I guess I have to poll my friends. Listeners, if you were to have, this is where you should contact us on bnb_pod. If you were to have a candle, what would your candle smell like? What would your your soul candle smell like? I'm curious. Tweet at us, let us know. Tap us on Instagram, send us a DM. The final thing for us is, do you all have a ritual that you are really fond of that keeps you going? And Devon, I guess you've already kind of talked about this from talking about the importance of ritual, but is there one in particular that you live and die on, or that is really particularly special?
I won't go into the live and die ones, but a new one. I'm gonna just my whole life is defined by having these two dogs now. A new one that I am very much enjoying is that my husband and I both take both dogs out in the morning. And normally it
Mhm.
would be just me. And so because we only had the one dog, and I would take her in the morning and Ian would take her at night. And now because we have two of them, we're introducing this new ritual where we both wake up at the same time. We both take the dogs out, and it's been really pleasant. I feel like this is
Oh,
it's a very positive break from my normal ritual, which is I get up, I take the dog, and I come back. It's just been really fulfilling. I'm just appreciating more things about the morning now that I have a
yeah,
companion to walk around with in the morning and not just my little animal. So good new ritual.
I
It's
love it.
possible to have new ones, it turns out.
Turns out. Kris, what about you?
Oh man, I love routines, but I'm always changing them up. Honestly, every few months, it seems like I find
Yeah.
something different or better and I move on. One of my favorites is morning yoga, though. I do a really short, it's not a long routine, it's really short routine. And because it's short, I can remember to get it done and not be like late for other things. So doing that before I even leave the room, it's right there in my bedroom. I've got a little mat and I do my morning yoga and I think things. I don't mean to, it just happens when I move that I think things and they end up being kind of affirmation type things. Like, I'm going to do this. And
Yeah.
I mean it. I'm not like, oh God, I'm gonna, I'm not forcing it. It just sort of comes out of me and it feels really good. And it makes me feel like I'm here, I'm moving. This is the shape that I have. This is the weight that I have. This is the reach and strength and flexibility that I have to start my day knowing my shape really seems to set me in a, okay, now I know what I can and cannot do. That's my big fence for the day, is the
Yeah.
shape that I'm in, because some days I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And so doing my morning yoga helps me to remember, I don't want to say what I am, but I kind of mean it that way.
Yeah.
What I
Absolutely.
am made of, what
Mm.
possibilities I'm made of, and where my edges are. I love finding my edges, because then I know what side things are on. It's important to the way that I think. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. Oh, is there anything about this this little ficlet that we want to make sure we touch on before we transition into gratitude today?
It's Kareem's character introduction. I think
Yeah.
he'll play a role in season 4, and remember what he is like in this moment, going into his arc in the future.
I sense a
Yeah.
subtle hint
Yep.
there. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for this little invitation into keeping that in mind. For gratitude today, I would like to invite us to who are we grateful for in the elven canon. And so whether it be the Sunfire Elves, whether it be Kareem or Janai or Kessa or anyone else in the Elven canon, we'll be able to use this gratitude for the elves today. Is there any elf in the Dragon Prince universe that you are particularly grateful for, mentioned or unmentioned in this fanfic?
I'm going to do a really light and stupid one. I'm grateful for all of the sort of main characters, but on the side, I'm really grateful for Kazi, because they are more of a sort of like
Yeah.
a normal person in the scope of, oftentimes fantasy universes are just like all about the big players. And I think Dragon Prince is definitely, it's about people who have a powerful role in the world and how they shape it. That's big and thematic. It's like, what do you do with power? But I also really appreciate characters like Kazi, because they sort of are just like a graduated college student who happens to have like a job that's adjacent to some of these very powerful people. And I
Yeah.
really love them. I think they're just delightful, because I feel like if I were actually in Zadia, I might be kind of like that. They
Yeah.
are akin to something that I would see myself like. Realistically, I wouldn't be a very cool person in Zadia. I would just be some like bumbling, like try hard. And I think I appreciate that they are a glimpse into what, normal people in Zadia really sort of are.
Wow. All right, we have Kazi and then Kris.
I got a shout out to my boy Renan. I'm
Yes.
grateful for him because he's the first character that I really connected with. That'll tell you a lot about me right there. Um, because without getting really curious about, okay, dude, what is up with this elf? If I hadn't had that sort of curiosity, I wouldn't have made all the friends that I've got. I wouldn't be having this podcast conversation, etc. So really it's his long white elf hair. It just really
Yeah.
got me here. And that's just, it's hilarious and amazing to me.
I love it. I am particularly grateful for everyone, but if I had to narrow it down, I'd probably like, this is so hard. I guess I would pick Ithari right now. This is the moment that I'm in. Just what we've gotten so far, and then these short stories, and then all these beautiful comics of seeing him as a dad, and there's just so much joy. And there's just like what a lovely elf being. I just like, I'm just the personhood of everybody. I melt a little bit. Love him. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna have some great more. Okay, this has been another episode of Bending Not Breaking. Look forward to the next episode.